The chamber was vast, stretching upward into darkness that seemed to swallow light itself. Minho Park stood at the center of the circular floor, his hands clasped behind his back, his face showing nothing. Around him, elevated platforms held the 12 members of the Galactic Council, each representing a species that had ruled the stars for 50,000 years. Their forms varied wildly. Some were insectoid with chittering mandibles. Others resembled nothing from Earth's evolutionary tree. But they all shared one thing: the absolute certainty that they controlled everything. High Counselor Vexther spoke first. His voice came through the translator as a series of clicks and whistles, but the device rendered it into cold, precise words. Human, you stand before the oldest governing body in this galaxy. We have maintained peace and order since before your species learned to make fire. You will listen. Minho said nothing. Beside him, Guan Kim stood at parade rest, her military uniform crisp and formal. She had been a captain in the Earth Defense Force before becoming a liaison. Her eyes tracked each council member with the practiced assessment of a soldier, sizing up potential threats. Vexther continued. Humanity has been part of our galactic community for 47 years. In that time, you have colonized 23 systems. You have built military installations on 41 worlds. You have expanded faster than any species in recorded history. He paused, and the silence felt heavy. This ends now, another counselor spoke. Rallman was from a reptilian species, his scales gleaming under the chamber's lights. His voice was smoother, almost diplomatic. Please understand, Ambassador Park, we do not make these requirements out of malice. The galaxy has rules. Every species must contribute to the common good. Every species must accept limits to prevent conflict. The terms are simple, Vexther said. Humanity will surrender 40% of Earth's resource output to the Council's distribution system. You will limit all military expansion to your home system. No human warships beyond the Sol system's boundaries. No new colonies without Council approval. And you will accept Council observers on Earth itself to ensure compliance. Minho pulled out a small data pad from his jacket pocket. He made a note, his stylus moving slowly across the screen. The sound was barely audible, but in the silence of the chamber, it felt loud. He made another note. Then another. Dexion, an amphibious creature whose skin glistened with moisture, leaned forward from his platform. You understand these terms are non-negotiable, yes? This is not a request. This is the law of the Council. Every species submits to this law. How many species have you made these demands of? Minho asked. His voice was calm, conversational even. Every species that joins the galactic community, Rallman said. Over 600 civilizations, all have accepted their place in the proper order. And if a species refuses, Guan asked. It was the first time she had spoken. Vexther's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. No species has ever refused. The consequences would be severe. Economic isolation. Military intervention, if necessary. But it has never been necessary. When species understand the power of the Council, they comply. Minho made another note on his data pad. He looked up at the 12 Council members, his expression still neutral. You're asking us to give up 40% of our resources, to stop expanding, to allow your people to watch over us on our own world, to surrender our right to defend ourselves beyond our own system, as Vexther said. These are the terms. And you have never been refused, Minho said. Never, Rallman confirmed. The Council has maintained order for 50 millennia. Our authority is absolute. Minho closed his data pad. He slipped it back into his pocket. He looked at Jiwan, who gave him the smallest of nods. Then he looked back up at the Council members, meeting each of their eyes in turn. Some had eyes like humans. Others had compound vision or sense organs that didn't resemble eyes at all. But he made sure each one was looking at him. You've given me 72 hours to consult with my government, Minho said. But I don't need that long. Vexther leaned forward. You are prepared to accept immediately? That is wise. No, Minho said. The word hung in the air like a physical thing. The answer is no. The chamber erupted. Counselors spoke over each other, their voices mixing into a cacophony that the translators struggled to keep up with. Vexther's clicking became rapid and sharp. Dexion rose from his seat, his large eyes bulging. Even Rollman, who had seemed reasonable, looked shocked. "You cannot refuse," Vexther said, his voice cutting through the noise. "This is not possible." "No species refuses the council. Humanity does," Giwan said. Her voice was hard, military crisp. "You do not understand what you are doing," Rollman said. He sounded almost concerned. "The council has fleets. We have resources beyond your comprehension. We have maintained peace through strength for longer than your species has existed." Minho started walking toward the chamber's exit. Guan fell into step beside him. "We understand perfectly," Minho said without turning back. "We're a young species. We've only been in space for a few centuries. We've only known about you for 47 years. But we've learned one important lesson in our history." He stopped at the doorway and turned back. Every council member was staring at him. Some looked angry. Some looked confused. All looked certain that humanity had just made a fatal mistake. "We've learned that freedom isn't negotiable," Minho said. "You can't bargain with it. You can't trade it away for safety or comfort, and we won't surrender it because you've decided we should. We're going home now. If you want to discuss trade agreements or mutual defense pacts or cultural exchanges, we're happy to talk. But if you want submission, the answer is no. It will always be no." The doors closed behind them, sealing off the council chamber. Behind the sealed doors, chaos erupted among the 12 species who had never heard that word directed at them before. The council chamber had never seen chaos like this. For 3 days straight, the 12 members argued, shouted, and demanded action. Vexther paced on his platform, his insectoid legs clicking rapidly against the metal. The Exion's skin had turned a dark, angry purple. Even Rollman, usually calm and measured, showed signs of stress. "Oh, this is unprecedented," Vexther said for perhaps the 100th time. "In 50,000 years, no species has refused us, not one. And now these humans, these children who just learned to leave their planet, they say no?" Across the galaxy, on Earth, Prime Minister Heian Lee sat in a secure conference room deep beneath. Seoul, around the table, sat the leaders of Earth's major regions and military commanders. So-min Choi, the director of human intelligence, stood at the head of the table with a holographic display floating before her. "The council is in complete disarray," So-min said. Her fingers moved through the hologram, pulling up intercepted communications. "Our sources indicate they've never dealt with refusal before. Their entire system is built on automatic compliance." Yoon leaned back in his chair. He was a thin man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent 30 years as a colony administrator before entering politics. He knew what it meant to stand against powerful forces. "What's our assessment of their military capability?" So-min changed the display. Numbers and ship classifications appeared. "This is where it gets interesting. Prime Minister. The Council maintains a combined fleet of approximately 40,000 warships. On paper, that's overwhelming. They outnumber us 13-1, on paper," Hain repeated. "But not in practice?" "Not in practice," So-min confirmed. "We've analyzed their military history going back 12,000 years. The last time the Council fought a real war was against the Crexenal Empire. That civilization was destroyed so completely that we only found references to it in archaeological records. Since then, the Council has only used its military for peacekeeping and suppressing primitive civilizations." A military officer spoke up. "Their ships are built for intimidation, not combat. They're large, heavily shielded, and carry powerful energy weapons. But they're slow. Their tactics are basic. And most importantly, their crews have never faced an enemy that shoots back." Yoon steepled his fingers. "And humanity? We've been fighting each other for our entire history," So-min said quietly. "The Mars Rebellion alone killed 3 million people and lasted 8 years. The Belt Wars, the Luna Conflict, the Corporate Wars. We've refined our military doctrine through actual combat. Our ships are smaller and faster. Our weapons are tested. Our commanders have experience." "They don't know what they're dealing with," Hain said. "It wasn't a question. No, sir. They think we're just another species to be brought into line. Back at Centralist Prime, the council had finally stopped arguing long enough to make a decision. Dexion stood at the center of the chamber, his voice carrying the weight of authority. We must respond with force. Not an invasion. Not yet. But a show of power that cannot be ignored. What do you propose? Rallman asked. I will personally lead a peacekeeping fleet to the Sol system. 5,000 ships. We will position ourselves at the edge of their territory and demand they reconsider. When they see our power, they will understand their mistake. Liarana, a crystalline being who rarely spoke, chimed softly. Her voice came through the translator as musical tones. Perhaps we should consider negotiation. The humans may have legitimate concerns. Negotiation? Vexther's mandibles clicked sharply. They refused us. They walked out. There is nothing to negotiate. They submit, or they learn the price of defiance. On Earth, Minho Park and Jiwon Kim sat in a military command center. Watching the same intelligence reports that Soman had presented to the Prime Minister, Minho rubbed his eyes. He hadn't slept much since returning from Centralist Prime. They're coming, Jiwon said, pointing at the display. 5,000 ships. That's a significant force. It's a message, Minho said. They're trying to intimidate us. They expect us to see that fleet and immediately surrender. Minho looked at her. What do you think? Jiwon smiled, though there was no humor in it. I think they're going to be very surprised. Across human space, fleets began to move. Orders went out in encrypted bursts. 3,000 human warships, everything Earth could muster, began converging on defensive positions throughout the Sol system. Supply ships moved ammunition and fuel. Orbital defense platforms activated their weapon systems. Colony militias mobilized, but to outside observers, everything looked normal. Trade ships still moved along their routes. Civilian traffic continued. Earth's transmissions to the galaxy remained polite and routine. There was no panic, no threats, no grand declarations. The Council found this silence more disturbing than any threat would have been. They're not responding to our messages, Rallman said, reviewing the communication logs. We've sent 14 demands for them to reconsider. Not a single reply. Perhaps they're preparing to surrender, one of the other counselors suggested hopefully. No, Liarana said, her crystalline form refracting light into rainbow patterns. They're preparing for war. Dexion dismissed this with a wave. It doesn't matter what they prepare. 5,000 Council warships against 3,000 human ships? The outcome is certain. This will be over in hours, and the humans will learn their place. On Earth, in a small apartment in Seoul, a young couple watched the news. The reporters were calm, professional, explaining that a Council fleet was approaching, but that there was no cause for alarm. The man held his wife's hand. Are we going to be okay? She asked. Yes, he said, though he wasn't sure he believed it. In the command center, Hyun Lee made his final decision. When their fleet arrives, we do not fire first. We hold position. We make them make the first move. But if they fire on any human vessel or installation, we respond with everything we have. No warnings. No hesitation.
Someone nodded.
Admiral Junho has the fleet ready. He's positioning near Jupiter's orbit. It gives us tactical advantage and keeps Earth out of the immediate combat zone. And our answer to the Council's demands? Hyun asked. Minho spoke up. We've sent one message, Prime Minister. Just one. It says, we have nothing to discuss. Leave our space. Han looked around the table at the faces of Earth's leadership. Some looked worried. Some looked determined. All of them understood what was about to happen. For the first time in 50,000 years, someone was going to challenge the Galactic Council's authority, and that someone was humanity. Then we wait, Hyan said, and we see if they're smart enough to leave. The Council fleet jumped into hyperspace, bound for human territory. They expected surrender. They expected fear. What they were about to encounter was something the Council had forgotten existed, a species willing to fight for its freedom. The Council fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system like a metal storm. 5,000 warships, each one massive and gleaming, their shields already active and weapons charged. They arranged themselves in a traditional council formation, a wall of power meant to inspire awe and terror in equal measure. Fleetmaster Kexner stood on the bridge of his flagship. External mandate. He was a member of the Voreth species, tall and scaled with 4 arms. He had commanded peacekeeping missions for 300 years. Every single one had ended with immediate surrender from the target species. This would be no different. Scan the system, Kexner ordered. Locate the human fleet. His sensor officer worked quickly. Fleetmaster, we're detecting approximately 3,000 human vessels. They're holding position near the orbit of the 6th planet, Jupiter, the humans call it. Kexenor studied the tactical display. The human ships were smaller than he expected. Their largest vessels were perhaps a third the size of Council dreadnoughts. They seemed to be waiting, holding a defensive formation. Open a channel, Kexener said. Let's end this quickly. The communication went out, broadcasting across all frequencies. Kexener's translator rendered his words into every known language simultaneously. Humans of Earth, you are in violation of Galactic Council law. Your refusal to accept our terms is unacceptable. You have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally. Failure to comply will result in the destruction of your military forces. This is your only warning. On the EDS Indomitable, Admiral Junho Kong read the message and said nothing. He was a veteran of the Mars Rebellion, a man who had seen real combat, real death. The scars on his hands were from fires on the bridge of his first command. He looked at the Council fleet on his display and felt no fear, only calculation. Captain Yoonji Yoon stood beside him. She commanded the Indomitable, humanity's newest and most powerful warship. They're trying to scare us, Admiral. I know, Junho said. Let them wait. For 3 days, nothing happened. The Council fleet maintained its position. The human fleet maintained theirs. Kexenor sent increasingly urgent messages. Each one was ignored. On the 3rd day, he received new orders from Centralist Prime. Counselor Thexion's message was clear. Make them respond. Target one of their mining installations, Kexener ordered. On Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, fire warning shots. Destroy empty structures only. Show them we're serious. His weapons officer hesitated. Fleetmaster, is that wise? They might interpret it as an act of war. They need to understand consequences, Kexener said. Fire! 12 Council ships broke formation and approached Europa. Their energy weapons charged, bright blue light gathering at the tips of massive cannons. The mining installation sat on the moon's icy surface, clearly visible. Most of the structures were automated, but there were humans working there. 347 people, JUNHO, watched the Council ships move toward Europa. His jaw tightened. Beside him, Daeho Shin, his chief tactical officer, spoke quietly. Admiral, they're locking weapons on Europa Station. I see it, Junho said. He opened a direct channel to Kexener. His message was simple, only 5 words. Leave now, or face consequences. Kexener dismissed the message. These humans still didn't understand. He gave the order to fire. The energy weapons struck the mining installation's outer buildings. Explosions bloomed silently in Europa's thin atmosphere. 2 of the structures collapsed. An automator processor exploded, and 3 human workers died, caught in the blast when their habitat module lost pressure. For exactly 2 seconds, Junho said nothing. Then he spoke, his voice calm and cold. All ships, engage. The human fleet moved. Every ship, from the massive Indomitable down to the smallest destroyer, accelerated at speeds the Council had never seen. Where Council ships were built for intimidation, human ships were built for war. They were fast, maneuverable, and armed with weapons designed through centuries of human conflict. Kexener watched in confusion as the human fleet split into 3 groups. What are they doing? Are they retreating? No, Fleetmaster, his sensor officer said, his voice rising with alarm. They're flanking us. Captain Yunji gave orders rapidly. Target their shield generators. Fire missile spread delta. All weapons free. The Indomitable launched its first salvo. Not energy weapons, which the Council expected, but missiles. Hundreds of them, moving at relativistic speeds. The Council's shields were designed to deflect energy weapons. They were much less effective against kinetic projectiles. The first wave of missiles struck the Council line. Shields flared and died. Hulls cracked. One Council dreadnought lost its entire forward section. Another began venting atmosphere. The second wave hit before they could adjust. Return fire. Kexener shouted, "All ships, return fire." The Council fleet responded, but their movements were slow, coordinated for parade formations rather than actual combat. Their energy weapons were powerful, but required time to charge and aim. By the time they fired, the human ships had already moved. JUNHO coordinated the attack from the Indomitable's bridge. Third Fleet, concentrate fire on their left flank. First Fleet, maintain pressure on their center. Second Fleet, prepare to sweep their rear. The human fleet moved like a living thing, each ship knowing its role, each captain understanding the plan. They had drilled for this. They had prepared for this. Every human commander had studied the Council's formations, their ships, their tactics. They knew exactly where the weaknesses were. Youngji's ship dove under a Council dreadnought, so close that their shields nearly touched. The Indomitable's railguns fired at point-blank range, punching through the dreadnought's belly armor. The massive ship broke apart, its reactor going critical. Fleetmaster. Kexenar's tactical officer shouted, "We've lost 800 ships. We're being destroyed." Kexener couldn't believe what he was seeing. His fleet, the pride of the Galactic Council, was being torn apart. Human ships darted between his formations, targeting weak points with precision. Every time his ships tried to focus fire, humans had already moved. A human destroyer, barely a tenth the size of a Council cruiser, fired a spread of missiles into the cruiser's engine section. The cruiser's power failed, leaving it drifting helplessly. 3 more human ships finished it with concentrated railgun fire. "We need to retreat," Kexener's second officer said. "We can't retreat," Kexener said. But even as he said it, he knew they had to. "All ships, fall back. Emergency jump to Centralist Prime." The surviving Council ships began jumping to hyperspace, fleeing in disorder. The human fleet didn't pursue. They held position, securing the battlefield. JUNHO counted the losses on his display. 127 human ships destroyed. Nearly 4,000 Council ships gone. The battle had lasted 47 minutes. Yonji appeared on his screen. "Admiral, should we pursue?" "No," Junho said. "Let them run. Let them report what happened here. Sometimes the best message is the one survivors carry home." On Centralist Prime, the Council watched the sensor recordings in silence. Vexther's mandibles had stopped clicking. Dexion's skin had turned pale. Even Rallman, who had lived for 600 years and seen countless battles, looked shaken. How was this possible? One of the counselors whispered, "El Irana's crystalline form pulsed with dim light. We forgot what it means to face an enemy that knows how to fight. We've spent so long maintaining peace through threat that we forgot some species will not be threatened." The truth settled over the Council chamber like a weight. For 50,000 years, they had ruled through the certainty of their power. In 47 minutes, humanity had shattered that certainty completely. The news spread across the galaxy faster than hyperspace travel. The Galactic Council, the ancient authority that had maintained order for 50,000 years, had been defeated. Not just defeated, but utterly destroyed in combat. 4,782 ships lost. Against humans, a species barely past their first century in space. In the Council chamber on Centralist Prime, chaos reigned for the 3rd week straight. 6 of the 12 Council species had already withdrawn their military forces from joint operations. 3 had recalled their ambassadors. The unity that had held the galactic order together was fracturing. "This is your fault." Vexther clicked at Thexion. "You insisted on military action. You said it would be simple. I acted on the Council's authority." Thexiona's skin had shifted to an angry red. "We all voted for the intervention." Don't pretend otherwise now that it failed. Perlman tried to restore order, but even his diplomatic skills were failing. We must focus on the present situation. The humans have proven they can defend themselves. We need to reassess our approach. Reassess? Another counselor, a methane-breathing species whose name translated roughly as Elder Kelvin, spoke through his environmental suit. The entire galaxy is reassessing us. Do you know how many species have stopped paying their resource contributions? 17. Do you know how many have declared independence from council oversight? 23. And those numbers grow every day. On Earth, Seojin Bei sat in her office reviewing reports from across the galaxy. She was humanity's leading xenanthropologist, someone who had spent her life studying alien cultures. Now her expertise was more valuable than ever. The council maintained control through a carefully constructed image. She explained to Prime Minister Hien via secure video link. They were seen as invincible, ancient, wise. That image is shattered now. We showed that they could bleed. Hien looked tired. The stress of the past weeks showed in new lines on his face. What's the fallout? Massive, Seojin said. She pulled up a map of the galaxy. Hundreds of systems were highlighted in different colors. These yellow systems are council members who are questioning their loyalty. These red ones have already declared independence. These green ones are reaching out to us. Reaching out how? Requesting protection. Offering alliances. Asking if we'll help them stand against council retaliation. Seojin paused. Prime Minister, we've accidentally started a revolution. Every species that the council suppressed, every civilization that resented their rule, they're all looking at us as the example that it can be done. Commander Nario was experiencing this firsthand. She led Earth's deep space reconnaissance, and her ship, the EDS Explorer, was making contact with species far from council space. In a small system called Tellura, she met with representatives of 3 different civilizations. The Telluran ambassador was a small, furred creature who spoke rapidly through the translator. Is it true? Did you really destroy a council fleet? We defended ourselves, Nari said carefully. The council attacked our territory. We responded. They lost. Another ambassador said, this one representing a silicon-based species from a high-gravity world. 4,000 ships. The recordings are everywhere. Every species in the galaxy has seen them. The third ambassador leaned forward. We want to know if Earth will protect us if we refuse council authority. They demand 40% of our resources. They limit our expansion. They treat us like children. Can you help us? Nari chose her words carefully. Earth isn't looking to replace the council's authority with our own. We're not trying to build an empire. But we believe species should be free to govern themselves. If the council threatens you for asserting that freedom, then yes, we'll stand with you. Across the galaxy, Ambassador Juri Nam was having similar conversations. She had been assigned to the fringe worlds, areas far from Centralist Prime, where council authority had always been loosest. Now, those worlds were buzzing with activity. In one system, she watched as 4 minor alien civilizations formally signed a mutual defense pact with each other, using human military advisors to help organize their forces. In another, species that had been forbidden from developing FTL technology by Council, Decree launched their first hyperspace-capable ship in defiance. This is getting complicated, Juri reported to Earth. We're not just dealing with the Council anymore. We're dealing with a complete restructuring of galactic politics. Every day, more species are declaring independence. Some are peaceful about it. Others are preparing for war. Are we prepared for that? So-min Choi asked. She was in a strategy meeting with Earth's leadership, reviewing reports from across human-controlled space. No, Junho said bluntly. The Admiral had returned to Earth after the battle. We can defend ourselves against the Council. But if this turns into a galactic civil war with hundreds of species involved, we're going to be overwhelmed. We have 3,000 ships. The galaxy has millions, and we need to prevent that, Hien said. We need to find a solution that doesn't involve endless warfare. Back on Centralist Prime, the Council was reaching the same conclusion. Lorana had finally gained control of the chamber, and she spoke with the authority that came from being one of the oldest members. We have three options, she said, her crystalline form pulsing with light. 1. We attempt to destroy humanity with overwhelming force. This would require assembling every ship from every council species. It might succeed, but it would be costly, and it would prove to every watching species that we rule through violence alone. What's the second option? Rallman asked. We fracture. Each council species goes its own way. We abandon the idea of galactic governance entirely. This would lead to chaos, wars, and suffering on a scale we haven't seen in millennia. Vexthor clicked his mandibles. And the third option? We adapt, Lirana said. We acknowledge that our system was flawed. We offer humanity a seat on the council. Not as a junior member, but as an equal. And we use this crisis to reform the council itself, to make it something that species want to join rather than something they're forced to accept. The chamber fell silent. The idea was radical. The council had never admitted equals before. Every species joined as a subordinate, but as the silence stretched, they had tried force. It had failed catastrophically. They could try more force, but the cost was unthinkable. Or they could do something that the council had never done in 50,000 years. They could change. If we offer this, Rallman said slowly, the humans will demand concessions. They'll want reforms. They'll want rights for the species we've kept under our control. Yes, Lirana agreed. They will demand all of that and more. But consider the alternative. We can share power and maintain some authority. Or we can lose everything trying to hold on to power we can no longer enforce. Counselor Ornthus, an avian species who had been silent through most of the crisis, finally spoke. I vote for change. If we must share power to prevent the galaxy from burning, then we share power. The vote was close. Some counselors still believed they could win through force. Others wanted to abandon the whole system. But in the end, 8 of the 12 voted to offer humanity a council seat. On Earth, when Heian received the message, he sat in silence for a long time. Minho Park and Jiwon Kim waited for his response. They're offering us what we refuse to accept from them, Hyun finally said. A seat at the table. But this time, it comes with respect instead of submission. Do we accept? Minho asked Taiyin, looked at the galactic map on his screen. He saw the yellow systems, the red ones, the green ones. He saw a galaxy in transition, balanced on the edge between chaos and a new order. We accept, Hyun said, but we make it clear that we're not accepting for ourselves alone. We're accepting for every species that wants to be free. If the council wants us at their table, then the table has to be big enough for everyone. The message went out to Centralist Prime. The council read it and knew that their galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had declined to negotiate from weakness. Now, they were coming to negotiate from strength. They were bringing the whole galaxy with them. The new council chamber was different. The old one, with its 12 elevated platforms looking down on everyone else, had been redesigned. Now there were 47 platforms, all at the same height, arranged in a circle. No one looked down on anyone else. It had taken 6 months to build, and it represented everything that had changed in the galaxy. Minisho Park stood at one of those platforms, representing humanity. Beside him, Jiwon Kim stood in her military uniform, representing Earth's defense forces. Around them were representatives from species that had never dreamed they would have a voice in galactic governance. The Tellerons, the silicon-based Crothans, the methane breathers from the Outer Rim. Species that had been subjects were now equals. Vexthor was still present, but he no longer commanded the chamber. He and the other old council members retained their seats, but they were outvoted now. The ancient authority they had wielded for 50,000 years was gone, replaced by something new. Something that had to be earned rather than enforced. We called this session to order, Ornthus said. The avian counselor had been elected as the new council speaker, a position that rotated every galactic year. Ambassador Park, you have requested time to address the council regarding the new defense protocols. Minho stepped forward. 6 months ago, he had stood in a chamber and said no to the most powerful authority in the galaxy. Today he stood in a very different chamber, about to help build something better. Thank you, Speaker, Minho said. As everyone here knows, the transition to the new council system has not been peaceful everywhere. 17 systems that benefited from the old tribute system have refused to recognize the new council. They've formed what they're calling the Restoration Alliance. They have approximately 6,000 ships between them. Murmurs ran through the chamber. The Restoration Alliance wanted to return to the old system, where stronger species controlled weaker ones. They saw the new council as chaos, as weakness. Humanity's been asked to lead the defense against this alliance, Minho continued. We want to be clear about what that means. We will defend council members who request our help. We will not invade systems that simply wish to remain independent. And we will not become the new enforcers of a new empire. Rallman, who had adapted better than most of the old council, spoke up. What you're describing is a volunteer defense force. Species choose to participate or not. That's very different from the old system. Yes, Guan said, stepping forward. We've been working with 17 species to create a joint military command. Not a force for conquest, but a true mutual defense pact. Each species maintains control of their own ships. Each species has equal say in how the force is deployed. And no species is required to participate in operations they disagree with. A representative from one of the former subject species stood. Her name was difficult to pronounce, but the translator rendered it as Counselor Brightwaters. This is a good system. But what happens when the council disagrees? What if humanity votes to defend a system, and others vote against it? Then humanity acts alone, Minho said simply. Or doesn't act at all, depending on the situation. That's what being equals means. We can disagree. We can argue. But we can't force each other to comply. Vexter clicked his mandibles. A sound everyone had learned meant skepticism. This system seems inefficient. The old council could make decisions quickly. This new system requires debate, consensus, negotiation. Yes, Minho agreed. It's much slower, much more complicated. But it's also more just. The old system was efficient because you forced everyone to agree with you. This system is slow because we have to actually convince each other. Taiyang Song, a human philosopher who served as an advisor to the council, spoke from the visitors section. He had been invited to observe the session. May I address the council, Speaker? Ornthus nodded. Please, Scholar Song. Your insights have been valuable. Taiyang stood. He was an older man with white hair and gentle eyes. He had spent his life studying ethics and governance. Now, he found himself helping to shape a galactic civilization. I want to speak about power, Taiyang said. The old council had absolute power. They maintained it through military force and economic control. But power has a corrupting influence. It makes you believe that your way is the only way. That your rules are universal truths rather than choices. He paused, looking around the chamber. Humanity didn't refuse the old council because we wanted power for ourselves. We refused because we understood that power taken by force is not legitimate. Power must be given freely, or it's just oppression with a different name. Lorana's crystalline form pulsed with light. Scholar Song speaks wisdom. I've lived for 800 years. I served on the old council. I believed we were bringing order to the galaxy. But we were really just forcing our order on others. We called it peace, but it was compliance. And now? Asked a young counselor from a species that had gained independence only 4 months ago. Now we're trying something harder, Lorana said. We're trying to build a real civilization. One where different species, with different values and different needs, can work together without one dominating the others. It's messy. It's slow. But it's real. The session continued for hours. They discussed trade agreements, defense protocols, cultural exchange programs, scientific cooperation. Every discussion took longer than it would have under the old system. Every decision required more compromise. But when the session ended, Minho felt something he hadn't expected. Hope he found Giwan in one of the observation decks, looking out at the stars. Centralus Prime orbited a binary star system, and the view was spectacular. Do you think this will work? Juan asked. This new council, this new system. I don't know, Minho admitted. It's fragile. There are still species that want the old ways back. There are conflicts brewing. The Restoration Alliance isn't going to give up easily, but it's worth trying, Minho said. 6 months ago, we said no because we refused to surrender our freedom. Today, we're part of something that tries to protect everyone's freedom. That seems like progress. Gi Wan smiled. Admiral Junho would say we got lucky. That our military victory was the only reason any of this is possible. He's probably right, Minho said. But I like to think it was more than luck. The Council was used to species that surrendered immediately or that couldn't fight back. They'd never faced a species that could defend itself, and chose to anyway, humanity. Fuck yeah, Guan said quietly, using the old phrase that had become popular among Earth's military. Minho laughed. That's not very diplomatic. No, but it's accurate. Back on Earth. Prime Minister Heian watched the news reports from Centralis Prime. The formation of the new Kalsu was the biggest story across the galaxy. Some reports were positive, praising the new system. Others were critical, warning of chaos and weakness. Salmon Choi brought him the latest intelligence reports. The Restoration Alliance is building up their forces. They're going to test us within the next 6 months. They want to prove the new council can't defend itself. Can we? Hyun asked. If we have support from the other council members, yes. The joint defense force that Ambassador Kim has been organizing includes 23 species now. That's about 8,000 ships total. Not as many as the Alliance, but our military doctrine is better. And if we don't have support... Salman was quiet for a moment. Then we'll have to decide if we're willing to fight alone. Hyan nodded slowly. It was the same decision they'd faced 6 months ago. Stand and fight, or submit to someone else's authority. The situation was different now, more complicated, but the fundamental choice remained the same. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it, Heian said. For now, we support the new council. We help it grow. We give it a chance to prove that a different way is possible. On Centralis Prime, the council session had ended, but representatives lingered, talking in small groups. Minho watched as species that had been enemies under the old system discussed trade agreements. He saw military commanders from different civilizations planning joint exercises. He saw scientists excited about sharing research. It was messy. It was chaotic. It was everything the old council had tried to prevent, and it was beautiful. Rallman approached him. The old reptilian counselor moved slowly now, the stress of the past months showing in his movements. Ambassador Park, Rallman said. I want to thank you for what? Minho asked, genuinely surprised. For saying no, Rallman said. I didn't understand it at the time. I thought you were being foolish, throwing away peace for pride. But you were right. The old council wasn't maintaining peace. We were maintaining control. There's a difference. You're welcome, Minho said. Though I'm not sure humanity deserves all the credit. We just refused to submit. The rest of the galaxy did the hard work of building something new. Perhaps, Rallman said, but sometimes refusing to submit is the hardest work of all. They stood together, looking out at the new council chamber. 47 species, all equals, all with a voice. It wouldn't be easy. There would be conflicts, disagreements, probably even wars. But, for the first time in 50,000 years, the galaxy had a chance to build something based on cooperation rather than domination. And it had all started with one word, spoken by one ambassador in one chamber 6 months ago. No, the most powerful negotiation, Minho thought, is sometimes the refusal to negotiate from weakness. Humanity hadn't sought to rule the galaxy. They had simply refused to be ruled. And in that refusal, they had freed not just themselves, but countless others who had been waiting for someone to show them it was possible. The new order was messy, complicated, and uncertain. But it was theirs. All of theirs. And that made all the difference.